The clay spun, a slick grey ghost beneath Elena Ramirez's hands. Centering. Always the centering first. Her breath hitched, caught somewhere between the deep focus required and the knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. Outside the tall, narrow window of her studio in Cadiz El Populo barrio, the late May sunlight slanted golden, promising warmth, promising summer. It bounced off the ancient, salt-bleached stone of the building opposite, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, tiny galaxies disturbed by the rhythmic whir of the pottery wheel. This exhibition, her first solo show at Sofia Vargas's respected gallery near the Plaza de San Juan de Dios, was everything. It was validation, opportunity, a culmination of years spent coaxing form from earth, fire from vision. It was also, she admitted, terrifying. A sharp trill from her mobile phone shattered the fragile concentration. Elena flinched, her hands momentarily losing pressure. The clay wobbled precariously. With a sigh, she stopped the wheel, wiped her gritty hands on her apron, and reached for the phone. Her brother's name flashed on the screen, Mateo. Her thumb hovered over the accept icon. A familiar wave of conflicted emotions washed over her. A conditioned reflex of love, obligation, and a weary, preemptive defensiveness. Mateo, coming to Cadiz, ostensibly to support her for the exhibition launch next week. The knot in her chest tightened further, morphing into a leaden weight. Support from Mateo often felt less like a foundation and more like a slow, insidious erosion. "Elena, hermanita, how's my star artist?" His voice boomed through the phone, too loud, too bright, instantly filling her small sanctuary with an energy that felt foreign, invasive. "Hola, Mateo," she managed, keeping her voice even. "I'm working. The opening is soon." "Exactly, which is why I decided to come down a bit early. Surprise! I'm catching the train from Sevilla tomorrow morning. Be there by lunchtime. We can grab some pescadito frito down by La Caleta. Celebrate." Celebrate what? The impending stress? Her already frayed nerves? Elena closed her eyes briefly. "Mateo, that's unexpected. I'm really busy here, you know. Every moment counts." "Nonsense. You need a break. All work and no play. Besides, family should be there for the big moments. Mama and Papa send their love. They're so proud." He deftly invoked their parents, the unspoken reminder of duty, of expectation. "Don't worry about a thing. I'll find my way to your place from the station. See you tomorrow." Click. He hadn't asked if it was convenient. He hadn't considered her schedule. He had simply announced his arrival, expecting her world to rearrange itself around his orbit, as it always had. Elena stared at the silent phone, the silence in the studio now feeling heavy, charged. The centered clay on the wheel seemed to mock her. Her own center felt miles away. She picked up a trimming tool, her hand less steady than before. Tomorrow. Mateo would be here tomorrow, and the fragile piece of her studio, the delicate balance she needed to create, felt suddenly, terrifyingly precarious. Mateo arrived like a minor weather system, trailing sunshine, noise, and a faint scent of expensive cologne that seemed out of place amidst the earthy aroma of clay and damp plaster. He hugged her tightly, spinning her around in the cramped doorway of her studio apartment, his laughter echoing off the high ceilings. "Look at you, the famous artist. Skinny, though. Working too hard, eh?" It began immediately. The appraisal disguised as concern, the compliment laced with a subtle critique. Elena forced a smile, extricating herself. "It's good to see you, Mateo. Let me get you some water." He tossed his stylish weekend bag onto the only armchair not draped in protective sheeting, surveying the small space. Pots in various stages of completion lined every available surface, bisque-fired pieces waiting for glaze, tall vases drying slowly under plastic, smaller bowls stacked precariously. "Cozy," he commented, his gaze lingering on a row of experimental cups with intricate hand-carved patterns. "Interesting texture. A bit busy, maybe? Are you sure that's what people are buying these days?" Elena stiffened, fetching the water. "It's my style, Mateo. It's what I want to make." Of course. Just thinking commercially. Sofia runs a serious gallery, you know. You want things to sell, right?" He took the water, flashing a brilliant smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "So, lunch? I'm starving. That place near the Mercado Central, the one with the amazing tortillitas de camarones?" He steered the conversation, set the agenda. Elena found herself nodding, already adjusting her carefully planned afternoon schedule. As they walked through the narrow, winding streets of El Populo, the ancient stones radiating stored heat, Matteo charmed the locals, greeted acquaintances with booming familiarity, recounted anecdotes where he was invariably the hero or the witty protagonist. Elena walked beside him, feeling increasingly like a shadow, an accessory to his performance. At the tapas bar, noisy and bustling, he ordered extravagantly, waving away her attempts to choose something simpler. "My treat, Hermanita, celebrating your success." He proceeded to hold court, engaging the bartender in loud conversation, offering unsolicited advice to the couple at the next table about their wine choice. When he finally turned his attention back to Elena, it was to recount a story about a mutual acquaintance who had recently landed a prestigious commission in Madrid. "Incredible work," he enthused. "Very minimalist, very chic. Completely different from your stuff, of course, but impressive." The comparison hung in the air, unspoken but clear. His work was impressive. Hers was something else. Elena picked at a prawn fritter, the salty crunch suddenly tasteless. She felt the familiar churn of resentment battling the ingrained habit of making excuses for him. "He doesn't mean it that way. He's just trying to be encouraging. Why am I so sensitive?" The questions echoed the ones he often posed directly when she dared to object. The days leading up to the exhibition blurred into a stressful montage orchestrated by Matteo's presence. He meant well, he insisted. He was only there to help. But his help manifested as constant interruption. He'd appear at the studio unannounced, bringing pastries but staying for hours, offering a running commentary on her technique. "Are you sure that glaze temperature is right?" Fiddling with her tools, or taking loud, important phone calls about his own vaguely defined business ventures. Elena found herself working late into the night, after he'd finally gone out to sample Caddy's nightlife, or early in the mornings before he surfaced. The joy of creation became tinged with anxiety, the quiet hum of the wheel often drowned out by the echo of his voice in her head. Her shoulders ached with tension, a persistent headache thrummed behind her eyes. Sleep offered little respite, filled with dreams of collapsing pots and critical eyes. One afternoon, she visited Sophia's gallery to discuss the final layout. The space was serene, filled with cool, indirect light. Sophia Vargas, elegant in charcoal linen, greeted her with a calm warmth that felt like balm on Elena's frayed nerves. Sophia moved with quiet grace, her observations astute but always respectful of Elena's vision. "The large platters here perhaps to anchor this wall," Sophia murmured, gesturing with a slender hand. "Their boldness draws the eye." She paused, looking closely at Elena. "You seem tired, Corrida. Everything all right?" "Just busy," Elena deflected, unable to voice the real source of her exhaustion. "Pre-exhibition nerves, I suppose." Sophia's gaze was perceptive. "Protect your energy, Elena. The clay remembers. It reflects the potter's spirit." She didn't pry further, but her words resonated, a quiet validation of the turmoil Elena felt but couldn't name. Leaving the gallery's calm, Elena stepped back into the vibrant Cadiz streets, the contrast jarring. The thought of returning to her apartment, where Matteo would likely be lounging, waiting to recount his latest exploits or offer more helpful suggestions, filled her with a profound weariness. A memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. She was 16, proudly showing Matteo a prize she'd won in a local youth art competition, a small ceramic bird, simple but heartfelt. He'd glanced at it dismissively. "Cute," he'd said, before launching into a story about his own success on the school football team that week. Later, she'd overheard him telling their parents it was sweet she had a little hobbies, implying it was nothing serious. She'd felt a prickle of hurt then, but had quickly squashed it, telling herself he was just being Matteo. Now the memory felt different, part of a long, suffocating pattern she hadn't allowed herself to see. That evening, emboldened by Sophia's quiet encouragement and the resurfaced memory, Elena tried to set a small boundary. Matteo was sprawling on her sofa, scrolling through his phone while she was trying to carefully apply wax resist to a delicate batch of bowls. "Matteo," she began, her voice tighter than she intended, "I really need to concentrate on this. Could you maybe read in the other room? Or perhaps go for a walk?" He looked up, feigning hurt surprise. "What, am I bothering you? I thought you liked having me here. I came all this way just to support you, Elena, sacrificed my own time." The guilt trip landed squarely. "Honestly, sometimes you are just too sensitive. Relax a little. Have some fun." He patted the sofa beside him. Come on, tell me about these bowls. What's the big deal? Elena's resolve crumbled. It was easier to acquiesce, to pretend his presence wasn't disruptive, than to face the predictable storm of wounded pride and accusations. She forced a smile and tried to explain the technique, while inside something small and vital felt like it was chipping away. The bowls felt less like her own creation, and more like a stage for his casual disregard. The near breaking point came 2 days later. Sophia had stopped by the studio briefly to confirm delivery times. Matteo, naturally, turned on the charm, monopolizing the conversation, boasting about Elena's talent, in a way that subtly centered himself as the supportive, discerning brother. As he gestured expansively while recounting an anecdote, his elbow knocked against a shelf laden with small, intricately glazed porcelain cups, nearly finished, destined for the exhibition. 3 of them tumbled to the concrete floor, shattering with sickening finality. Silence descended. Sophia gasped softly. Matteo stared at the glittering shards, his expression momentarily stunned, then quickly shifting to defensive bluster. "Clumsy shelf!" he exclaimed. "Honestly, Elena, you need to organize this place better. It's a death trap." Elena stared at the broken pieces, the hours of work reduced to fragments. Something snapped within her, a cold, clear anger, sharp as the shards on the floor, cut through the fog of guilt and accommodation. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She looked directly at Matteo, her voice dangerously quiet. "It wasn't the shelf, Matteo." He blinked, taken aback by her tone. "What? Don't be ridiculous. You need to be more careful in here," Elena continued, her gaze unwavering. "These things matter to me." Sophia, sensing the tension, quickly made her excuses and left, offering Elena a look of deep sympathy. Matteo shifted uncomfortably. "Accidents happen, Hermanita. Don't make a tragedy out of it. They're just cups. Just cups. Just pottery. Just her life's work." The dismissal, so casual, so complete, landed like a physical blow. He didn't understand. He would never understand. And the effort of trying to make him, of shrinking herself to accommodate his carelessness, suddenly felt like an unbearable weight. She didn't argue further. She knelt and began carefully picking up the pieces, the silence stretching between them, thick with unspoken history and the sharp edges of broken things. Matteo watched her for a moment, then shrugged, muttered something about needing fresh air and left. Elena was alone, the silence ringing, the cost of his support lying shattered at her feet. 2 nights before the opening. The studio air was thick with the smell of drying glaze and turpentine, heavy with Elena's exhaustion. Empty coffee cups littered the workbench. She moved automatically, glazing the last few pieces, her body aching but her mind strangely focused, running on fumes and sheer will. The shattered cups were gone, swept away, but the clarity they had brought remained. The harsh buzz of the intercom startled her violently. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her heart hammered against her ribs. It could only be one person. "Elena! Let me up! Brought you some churros!" Matteo's voice, slightly slurred, crackled through the speaker. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the button. Every instinct screamed no. But the ingrained habit, the fear of his reaction warred with the newfound resolve. She buzzed him in, bracing herself. He burst into the studio, overly jovial, a greasy paper bag clutched in his hand. The smell of fried dough and cheap wine followed him. "Working late, eh? My little Duracell bunny." He surveyed the nearly finished work lining the shelves. Looking good. Almost ready for the big time." He leaned against the workbench, dangerously close to a large, complex vase she'd spent weeks perfecting. "You know," he began, his tone shifting, becoming confidential, almost pitying. "I was talking to Fernando, you know, the guy with the gallery in Seville, and he was saying the market for this kind of rustic stuff, it's pretty niche, pretty limited." Elena stopped glazing, her brush suspended mid-air. "What are you saying, Matteo?" "Just being realistic, Hermanita. Don't want you to get your hopes too high, that's all. It's nice what you do. Really, it's sweet." He waved a hand dismissively. "But let's be honest, it's just pottery, a nice hobby. Don't expect it to change your life. Just pottery." The words echoed the dismissal of the broken cups, the dismissal of her 16-year-old self's prize, the dismissal of her entire passion, her identity. It wasn't concern, it was poison, dripped slowly over years. In that moment, Under the harsh glare of the studio lights, illuminated by her own bone-deep exhaustion and the fragile beauty of the work surrounding them, the pattern wasn't just visible, it was undeniable. He wasn't supporting her, he was containing her, keeping her small, tethered to his orbit by guilt and doubt. His insecurity demanded her diminishment. She put the brush down carefully. She turned to face him, her wariness replaced by a startling, quiet strength she hadn't known she possessed. The tremor was gone from her hands. "Matteo," she said, her voice low but perfectly steady, "I need you to leave." He blinked, his jovial mask faltering. "What? Elena, I just got here! I brought churros!" "This isn't working," she continued, the words emerging calmer than she felt. "Your being here, the way you talk about my work, about me, it's not helpful, it's harmful." Each word was a stone laid in a wall she hadn't realized she was building. Matteo's face flushed. "Harmful? Are you crazy? I'm your brother. I'm trying to help you, trying to keep your feet on the ground." "My feet are on the ground," Elena said. "This ground." She gestured to the clay-dusted floor of her studio, her sanctuary. "This is my work, this is my life, and I need space to protect it, to protect myself." She met his gaze directly, the years of avoidance falling away. "I cannot continue our relationship like this, not with you constantly undermining me, even if you don't mean to." A flicker of doubt, does he mean to? But she pushed it aside. The impact was the same. "So I'm asking you to leave now, and I don't want you to come to the opening." The finality of it hung in the air. Matteo stared at her, his expression shifting rapidly from disbelief to wounded pride, then to outright anger. "After everything I've done? After I came all this way? You ungrateful." "Leave, Matteo," Elena repeated, her voice unwavering, though her heart felt like it might beat out of her chest. For a long moment he just stood there, seeming to deflate slightly, the boisterous energy draining away, leaving something smaller and meaner in its place. Then, with a sneer, he threw the bag of churros onto the floor. "Fine," he spat. "Stay here with your precious mud pies. See if I care." He turned and stormed out, slamming the studio door so hard that several finished pieces rattled ominously on their shelves. Silence flooded the room, vast and echoing. Elena stood frozen, listening to his angry footsteps clattering down the stone staircase. Her body trembled, a delayed reaction to the confrontation. Tears pricked her eyes, tears of fear, of grief for the brotherly relationship she wished she had, of sheer gut-wrenching relief. She sank onto her stool, burying her face in her clay-stained hands. She had done it. She had finally, actually done it. The wall stood. It was terrifying. It was liberating. After a few moments, she took a deep, shuddering breath, the air tasting cleaner, lighter. She looked at the scattered churros on the floor, then at the waiting pots, her pots. With a newfound fragile determination, she stood up, swept the greasy mess aside, and picked up her brush. There was work to do. The next 2 days passed in a focused haze. Elena worked relentlessly, fueled by coffee and a quiet humming energy she hadn't felt in weeks. The studio felt lighter, calmer, solely hers. Matteo didn't call. He didn't text. It was a silence that felt both unnerving and profoundly peaceful. Sophia, when she came to arrange the transport of the pieces, simply gave Elena's arm a brief, understanding squeeze. No words were needed. Opening night. The gallery buzzed with muted conversation, the clink of wine glasses, the scent of lilies Sophia had placed strategically. Elena's work stood bathed in the soft gallery lighting, the earthy tones and intricate textures seeming to glow from within. She stood near the entrance, wearing a simple black dress, her handmade silver pendant cool against her skin. She felt incredibly vulnerable, exposed, yet strangely solid, rooted to the spot. People drifted through, murmuring appreciation, asking questions. Sophia introduced her to critics, collectors, fellow artists. Elena spoke about her process, her inspiration, her voice clearer and more confident than she'd expected. She scanned the crowd occasionally, a residual flicker of anxiety searching for Matteo's familiar figure, but he wasn't there. The relief was immediate, visceral. Later, standing alone for a moment beside her largest vase, the one Matteo had nearly knocked over, the one that represented weeks of struggle and near despair, Elena looked out through the gallery's arched window towards the darkening plaza. Cadiz glittered softly, the streetlights casting long shadows. She saw couples strolling, heard the distant strains of a lone guitar, her city, her life. Sophia appeared beside her, holding 2 glasses of wine. She handed one to Elena. "To you, Elena," she said softly, her eyes warm, "to your beautiful work, and to your courage." Elena met her gaze, a small, genuine smile touching her lips for the first time that evening. "Thank you, Sophia, for everything." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the night unfold. There were no guarantees of glowing reviews or sold-out shows. The future of her relationship with Matteo remained uncertain, a landscape she would have to navigate carefully on her own terms. The ingrained guilt hadn't vanished entirely.